Welcome to Deep Conversations Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Ryan Stewart. I am here with a special guest. He is a dedicated social entrepreneur. He's a political activist, a mentor, a keynote speaker. He's doing a lot, y'all. And he's a founder of Minority Millennials, Mr. Dan Lloyd.
Yes, sir. Ryan, it's a pleasure to connect with you today. Pleasure to share the little bit about myself and as well as our organization, Minority Millennials.
Mm-hmm. I want to, before we start, I want to thank you for taking some time out of your schedule, man, to sit down with me and talk with me, and I think it's extremely important, that, the things that you're doing with your minority millennials, and you being the founder of that. Can you explain your purpose for, how that started?
Yeah, first and foremost, it's really to bridge the gap between policy and culture.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of really educating our demographic on how important it is to be civically engaged, but not through the traditional ways that we talk about it. So when we say get involved, it's like go out and vote, fill out your census, volunteer. Those are very key, and those are the intangibles. However, explaining to our community about how power works is really important to tapping into the political infrastructure. And I always like to reference especially when I'm speaking to like young kids, like, how do you feel if someone comes up to you and says, give me your sneakers, or, take your backpack off. I want to, everything you have in there. Do you like that feeling of being bullied? Do you like that feeling of having no power? Well, that's essentially what's happening when you're not knowing or being knowledgeable about what's happening with policies around your community. Elected officials or the government is basically telling your community, like, give me your sneakers. And you're not going to do anything about it because you're probably distracted, or two, you're probably focused on other things like entertainment that are a lot more interesting and exciting. Your family dynamic may not be conducive to you really learning how the system works. So there's a lot of things that blinding you. And meanwhile, they're taking everything from you. And it's not always negative either. It could be very positive. The positive is once you tap in, then you have access to a world that is actually integrated and connected to everything that you like anyway. So politics is super connected to entertainment, athletics, workforce, careers, money, building wealth. So we are trying to bridge that gap between the two worlds so that the future generation of Black and brown youth really have a stake or equity, so to say, in the new 21st century economy.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back a little bit. When you were growing up, is there like a situation or something, or a circumstance that you can remember with yourself that made you kind of passionate about wanting to change some things in for the community?
Now, well, I have a pretty, not a unique, but a story. So I grew up, for one, I was adopted. So I grew up when a family, I got adopted. I moved into my family's house at 7 years old. It was predominantly like Black neighborhood, Wyandanch. And I'm mixed, right? So I was like, and I grew up in my birth mother, I grew up like kind of what we call like not white trash, but like a all white poverty community. So it wasn't like I wasn't tapped into a lot of things.
Yeah.
When I moved into my adopted family, it was predominantly all Black. So now I'm like learning all these new things, and my father's Black, and so, but I had to go to social services like every month, and I hated it because it was like they were disrespectful. They were disrespectful to my mother. They would talk to her like, and I couldn't do nothing about it. I didn't have any tools. I didn't know who I was. I just had no support to help my mother. So that was always one thing that really bothered me, was like the system of, free lunch and all the things that he had to go through to get all this stuff, and how embarrassing it was. And my father, though, was pretty connected, and I never listened. So it took me about to 30 years old, like I'm 36 now, where I was like, oh, now I'm starting to get like what he was talking about. Why, you didn't like these things, but the whole time you were resistant to doing things that can really change the way that these systems work. And when I moved back to Long Island, I was in Newark, New Jersey for almost 15 years. There was a $500 million development project going on. And I was talking to my childhood friends. Hey, who's the contractor? Who's the consultant? Is anybody getting construction jobs? Is anybody getting into a union? Do you have an NWBE? They're like, what? So these things that I learned, I'm realizing that the kids I grew up with had no access, no privilege to any of the stuff that I did. And that's what really kind of like fueled me to say, we need to create something that's really getting us at the table. And that was how we created Minority Millennials.
I think that's interesting too, because me growing up, we grew up in, I guess, the hood, people say, but it's, for us, it was just a neighborhood, you know what I mean? But we were never, like we were talking about off camera, we were never taught, business coming up in school. We were never taught things kind of just to survive out in the world. It was like when you come up, like you said, you learn when you were 30 about certain things. I'm 38, so it's like it took me all my mistakes and all the things going through. I moved out my parents' house when I was 22. I've been on my own since then, but it was like all the mistakes and just the things that I could have avoided. You know what I mean? Just if these things were taught a certain way in school, or just I don't want to say all, I don't want to say school is public schools are good. The knowledge and everything that you can learn from it is good, but certain things that you can take when you grow up with business and just entrepreneurship, you don't learn that stuff until you screw up 1,000 times along the way.
Yeah. And a lot of us, unfortunately, just don't have the bandwidth or the grit to, continue that journey. It's extremely difficult. I mean, I've had a lot of dark days and, depressing nights where it's just like, this is not working out. It's not making sense. And, you got to go back to a job. You know how many times I went back to a temp job in the past 15 years? Like,
me too.
Quit my job, temp job. Quit my job, temp job. Oh, this is about to be it, temp job. It's like nonstop. So it's difficult. And then, I would say, it's funny you said 38, so I'm 36. I would say, like, I feel like I'm 6 years old as an adult, if that makes sense. Like I figured it out a little bit at 30, made a lot of mistakes, and now I'm like 6 years old as a mature adult. Now I can, process things and take in information, absorb emotions, but at the same time, be aligned with who I am, what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, and be able to share and communicate what it is that I'm trying to accomplish. Because 99% of everything as an entrepreneur, whoever you are, is just communicating either through a proposal or verbally who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. And that's the hardest thing to find out.
And I think what you said is important too. What you said, who you are, because when you're in business and you may think to yourself, I got this. I'm gonna go in here and we're gonna, talk business and stuff. People can sniff that out. If you seem any little bit unsure about yourself, people in business can sniff that out quick, and it's like, nah, you know what I mean? So it's like knowing who you are, it's a certain kind of confidence that you can walk into a room with.
Yeah, I was just listening to something and it really hit me where when, imposter syndrome is a big thing, especially as an entrepreneur. Also, as you start kind of climbing the ladder of success and you get into these rooms, I was just at an event and I was late and they had me come. It was a governor's press conference and I was sitting right behind the governor. And I'm like, all right, what the, like I didn't expect to be sitting there, but I was very, very calm. Normally I would be, do I have to say anything? Do I got to put on a show? And I think it's because, and this is why it resonated with me, is like, because of so much sacrifice and work that I've invested into this organization, I'm actually kind of tired, and being tired, but prepared, I'm giving myself permission to be confident, where it's, I'm not trying to perform. I'm not going to like over talk. I may not even talk, to be quite honest, unless, there's really a need to be. And that permission for me kind of like overrides any insecurities that I naturally have, which is key because, in a room like that where you can really drop the ball, you're not even thinking about it because you're giving yourself permission to relax.
Man. Now, with your the Minority Millennials, why do you feel that your programs are vital for this upcoming generation?
Yep. So Minority Millennials, our mission is to help young people of color access jobs, build wealth, and become civically engaged. Everything with our organization, first and foremost, is politically motivated, politically focused, and politically based. So to me, I'm a political junkie. Most of my colleagues and friends were not as into it as I was. And so the first program is civic education, and it's really just educating our members or our workshops, events, our high school programmers, how and what civic education is, just the basic elements of government, but again, how power works, connecting the concept of a power to what they know or don't know about government. Also, why so many people pursue government or pursue power, because of what it can and or cannot accomplish for you, your family, or your community. It's very important to understand that. So that would be the first program. And I think being civically engaged, to me, I love Jay-Z, right? And I'm always talking to my business partner, because one of our goals is to get next to Jay-Z and really be able to talk to him about what we're doing. And I always tell him, there's a freestyle that he had, and it was like "Leader of the Free World" is with Beanie Siegel, and I'm telling him, like, Jay-Z's already a billionaire. You think he wants to have conversations with us about money? No. If he wants to run for office, he's going to want to tap into an organization that has access to thousands or millions of young people, specifically young people of color, that are newly motivated to get involved with the political system. Because that's really where the power is. If we're going to shift society, you got to be able to influence and have impact with new voters in a way that we've never seen before in human history. And that's kind of like where we implement our programming. So it's civic education. The second is workforce development. Because we're so civically engaged, we get access to every single industry, every career, every job on Long Island. And now we're starting to go out a little bit in Queens. But our organization gets first dibs. And so we're able to share these careers and opportunities with our membership, with our community. So they kind of put the responsibility on us. Hey, you claim to want DEI. Well, guess what? We have this position open. So I'm like, oh, good. All right. And then we go into our database, we go into our network and say, this is where somebody can, really be aligned with this position. So it's civic education, workforce development. And the third and last is economic development. And that's really just understanding how to be financially healthy. It's the basic premise of financial literacy. A little bit of the stock market and that entire industry, but more so just basic income, net worth, and expense. Like most of our dilemmas is just overspending and not making enough money. So how can we actually increase your wealth and your income by these things? And these are the things that we have access to. Basic NWE certification, or a contracting company that wants to hire a 1 or 2 year old Black-owned construction company, or a trucking company that we can connect them to. So those are the things that we really have been tying into our infrastructure.
So I want to ask you too, because a lot of times you hear about voting. You hear a lot of people think, they say, well, I hear, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I always hear people say, voting's really not that important because, my vote don't count. And, they say, people are going to do what they're going to do anyway, regardless if I vote. So, for you, can you just kind of break down why you think, or why voting is kind of important?
Yeah, I'll give you one kind of like broad concept and a very, very local. First, we have over 400 years of experience and examples of why voting matters. I mean, there's community groups and cultures that have prided themselves on voting and have benefited on every single one of those policies. So someone that says that their vote doesn't count, whatever pain or whatever economic issues they have in their life, someone that voted in the past 400 years has extremely benefited off of their ignorance or their lack thereof. And that's just a simple concept of life. There's no argument around it. There's no argument to say my vote doesn't matter. Why do I need to vote? You just don't want to be a part of the game. And that's okay. And that's why I like to talk about power, because this is a game. And people are playing it, whether we want to believe it or not. And so if we don't want to learn how to play the game, we really can't talk about the issues that we have both personally, professionally, and in our community. But on a hyper local level, voting absolutely matters. I mean, if you look at how you elect your district attorney or any of your judges, it goes through the local political party, which is in itself a voting system. Your local town boards, if we're advocating for housing like we are right now on Long Island, you can't get anything done. If you want to build a 24 unit apartment complex, you have to go through the planning commission and the town board. The planning commission is elected through the town board. The town board is elected by the people. You have a community like Wyandanch, or let's say the town of Hempstead, that is predominantly minorities, black and brown, which are really the majority, that does not vote, but the entire town board is white, except for one individual. So, and then they're not getting any of the policies or the benefits from having elected officials that serve them. I would say, though, it doesn't, from my experience, we want representation, but representation always doesn't actually reflect the needs of the community. So this is even why it's more important that your vote counts, because you have to do your research. It could be a person that's black or white or Native American or Asian or Hispanic. If they're not a person of integrity, morals, or values, they're not going to do anything for you anyway. So that, to me, is why your vote matters more than anything else, more than color, religion, race, or anything. You have to elect somebody almost that doesn't want to be elected, because then they're actually going to do things to benefit the community.
Now, you talked about your, when you were just talking about, different infrastructures being built, in the community. What's the struggle? What's the struggle that you find most difficult when you're, advocating for our communities?
It's been years. I mean, I think the struggle for me, or maybe people like me that are, trying to organize these efforts, is that we forget that this is not anything new. So in America is new, but this is not new in human political affairs, right? So we can go back to the, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, Egypt. The way that we go back and forth as humans is just a concept that we haven't mastered yet. And so it's incredibly difficult to communicate your needs to someone that is also trying to fulfill their needs and purpose. So part of it is trying to get a bunch of people, which is, our republic or our democracy, our democratic system, to vote for individuals, or to get people in leadership on boards or on police commissions. Trying to communicate that in a system that is very much human emotion based is the most difficult thing because you have to almost sacrifice your own emotions, sacrifice your own desires or your own needs in a way to ensure that the mission is being accomplished. And that's extremely hard. People will disrespect you. And that's regardless of race. Like I've been disrespected by people in our community of color, leaders that will literally get mad at you for trying to be more progressive or come up with a new idea, a new thought. Most of this work, the biggest barrier is people's emotions, and really trying to align with the needs of what they want, and at the same time trying to accomplish the needs of your mission.
I'm just listening to you, you talking about the because some people, they, you sit there and they don't know the ins and out of the things that that you go through, like you just explained, getting disrespected and all that, and sacrificing your own emotions for the betterment of the big picture, really. But people just see the finished product of stuff. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That's why I say, for me, I'm like, I thank God for people like you, because me, that's that's hard for me to, again, sacrifice my own emotions for people who are being people who are being disrespectful. That's hard to, bottle up and just say, you know what, this is gonna work. This is gonna be for the betterment later on. But whoo, man, see, that's why we need people like you, Dan.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would say what helps me though, like, and not to get too deep, but it
Mm-hmm.
is very important to have some type of. I'm a man of faith, so it is very important to have a spiritual backing. So, we're not just basing this off of carnal emotions, and if that was the case, we'd all just be fighting every day. So you need that kind of like supernatural, or some people call it a third element, that you're reminding yourself of what we're trying to accomplish here. And I think and when you do your research and you look at the people that were great, they all were very adamant about
Mm-hmm.
tapping into a higher power to deal with the struggles and frustrations of an everyday interaction with another person. So, a lot of that I've learned. I've learned a lot from my father about that, and being able to really absorb people and then be able to recycle it again for a focused purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's true. Like, the Bible talks about that. You're not wrestling against, powers and principality
Oh,
or
so yeah,
oh yeah,
exactly,
yeah, yeah,
yeah. So
yeah. So
so
it is it, and I was saying, I don't know if I could, and I think that was probably one of the best, the best analogies that you gave. You're like, I'm like 6 years of an adult. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like, the stuff that I learned now, I'm like, I'm still working on somebody is disrespectful. I'm still working on, like, all right, just kind of, chill a little bit. But, it's that's why we got people like you to, you know, give that example. You know what I mean?
mm.
To so other people can understand. So what really inspires you, to do this work?
I'm really big on time.
Mm-hmm.
Two things: time and identity. But time probably is the most important because it's fleeting. You really can't control it. It's something that I'm always very curious about. So legacy is huge to me, which is probably the biggest component of time. And whenever my time is over here, like I definitely I'm always probably you know infatuated with what or how I will be remembered. And so I really want to make sure that I left a lasting impact, but also that I was able to get all this stuff out of my brain and my head and the amount of time that I do have here, because we don't know, and so I just don't want to ever leave with all this stuff still in my brain. Like I want to get all these things out, and
Mm-hmm.
that's really hard. That's the hardest part, is processing all this. And then, as I mentioned, communicating that in a form that um, has an impact. Unfortunately, I'm not a musician. I don't have talents. I don't have your voice. I don't have so I got to do it through other ways, like other avenues that I can communicate. And most of the time, it's through like a social effort or through other people. And that could be really difficult to learn too.
Now, when I was reading your bio, it's you've been dealing with the county task force for police reform. Can
Yep.
you talk? Yeah, can you talk about that a little bit for me?
Yeah, Suffolk County is one of the most probably by percentage segregated on
Mm.
the Northeast, and historically has been segregated. It's 92% white. Um, and we actually just had our first African American police commissioner, Rodney Harrison, join about a year and a half ago. And it was, used as not only a form of policing on minority communities in the past, but also a form of employment. And that's the big thing that we forget, that being a law enforcer is also highly compensated in certain areas. And Suffolk County is the highest paid police department in America. So it was two pronged for us, like how are we making sure that existing police and law enforcement is actually instilling public safety in our communities that is reflective of the needs, not just being law enforcement or reactive. How are you being proactive, really building with the community, really showing what that looks like. But then two, that the hiring practices of the police reflects at least the percentage of people of color in the county and the residents. So we got a lot of work done. There are some things that we really didn't get accomplished that I think we could do better on. When it comes to how police officers are actually dealt with, when it comes to the different things that they may do or be accused of doing, I think it's still a little blurred. But we got a lot done in Suffolk County, and it's still going on. We just had a big announcement the other day. We created a human task force, human commission task force that community members can reach out to, so they don't just have to go to the police department. Which human rights task force, which we never had before in Suffolk County, and that's not anything new. It's just bringing something to this area that we haven't implemented. So it was definitely a good old boys club for quite some time, and now it's starting to become more diverse. We have a deputy police commissioner, Risco mentioned Lewis, who's a very strong African American woman, has been doing an incredible job. We have our deputy county executive, Vanessa Streeter, extremely supportive and strong. So there are good things happening, and I think now, honestly, though, it's really just getting our community to really buy into becoming a police officer and what that looks like for them financially. Although we don't want, what happened in Memphis, because I'm really disappointed in that. That was took us back quite a few years. I still don't quite understand what the heck happened there. But those are the things that we got to address internally as a community.
Now, do you again, we talked about this off camera, but do you plan on expanding, outside of New York and going across the country?
We've had a lot of requests to do it. It's just that was trying to really get the structure, the funding mechanisms in place so that we're sustainable. I don't want to have like a Minority Millennials of California or Tennessee. And, we've had those requests, and we don't have like the real ecosystem in place for sustainability. We would love to be here for another 100+ years, like the NAACPs and the urban leagues. But at the same time, we want to make sure that there's actual proof of progress as well. What are the key goals? What are we accomplishing? How are we seeing those metrics? So after, I think this year, maybe in like 2 years, as we reach a certain goal, we would be a little more positioned to charter more chapters in other areas. And we're also getting older, though. Millennials, we're up to like 41 now. So we just launched a Gen Z chapter in Long Island, which we never had before. So we have a 16-year-old junior in high school. Her name is Makala Macy, who runs our entire Gen Z chapter, which is ages 16 to 24. Because I was stressing myself out. Like when I started as I was 30, it was very much like in tune and aligned with all this stuff. And in 6 years, we got something like TikTok. We didn't have TikTok when we started this.
Yeah, man.
So I'm like trying to do all this stuff. It was too much. So, but Makayla, who loves the mission of Minority Millennials, was like, I want to bring this on. So now we got MMG, MM Gen Z, which is Minority Millennials and Gen Z, and she's running that entire chapter. So I don't have to do the TikToks. She does it naturally. She does it authentically, and she's talking directly to her age group. And now we're preparing them to be able to vote at age 18 with the knowledge that we just talked about. So it's not just go vote, go vote. It's they're going to vote thinking about power and only power, because that's really all it is.
I think that is so. What are some goals for you in the next, I guess, I'm gonna say for this year, and then some goals that you may have for the next 5 years?
Yeah, the immediate goal, we have a big summit coming up. It's called We Are the Future Summit, April 27th. So we'll love to have, if you're in the New York area, we'll love to have you attend. Let's touch base through Raven or however works best for you. I can get you a ticket. That's going to be an all-day event at Hofstra University. Earn Your Leisure is one of the keynote speakers. I'm sure you heard of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the biggest out right now. So we're blessed to have them on hand. We have a lot of state officials, a lot of local officials, and it's called We Are the Future, is to bridge the gap between policy and culture. So our goal with that event is to have over 1,000 attendees. That's the immediate goal. And then that would also really kind of visually show the impact that we can have as a demographic in an area like Long Island. And fast forward to the end of this year, we are launching a 501c4. It's called Minority Majority of America. A 501c4 is similar to a C3, which we are now, except that we can fundraise and then put that money into candidates. We can't do that as a C3. We can only educate. So essentially, we'd be creating our own party. So as we're like educating through the 501c3, we can then train. Let's say, if you wanted to run, and then well, by the way, like we can potentially raise $10,000 to $50,000 for you to run. And then if the local political party says no, we have someone else, we can actually say, well, we're going to run them anyway, and then we have the social media presence, we have the relationships, so it's really kind of creating a political infrastructure outside of the educational component. So that's this year. We're going to be launching that for this year's elections, which is the local 2023. 2024, I mean, we really want to have more of a national imprint with that C4. So we want to be in the rooms when they're talking about who's going to be president in 2024 in key states. So that's the immediate goals.
You got some. Now I want to ask you one more question. So, from I always like to ask my guests this question because I like the different responses and stuff, but what have you learned about yourself mentally and spiritually throughout this entire process of, founding the Minority Millennials and everything else?
I mean, well, one is I'm extremely human. Like I have no discipline. No, I mean, I'm being very honest. Like, almost have no discipline. I'm easily distracted. Still have all the same desires I had when I was 16 years old, but I'm 36. But I'm getting older and time is fleeting. So it's like I've had to literally force myself to have a everyday ritual of being disciplined, doing my devotions in the morning, working out, fasting, all the boring things that we hear. I've had to force myself to do those things because I'm just not moving forward. Once I actually started doing all that is when I started seeing progress in my professional career. And that's probably because I don't have any outstanding talent. Like those that have outstanding talents can be a little more lax in those areas. So I've learned that I'm average as they come. I cannot be average in my discipline because there's nothing, like no separating factor. I'm not getting anything done. There's nothing wowing people. So I've really had to be super disciplined with my faith, with my physical body, with my mental preparation, like being confident where it wasn't like I'm overselling or putting on a show. It's confident because I actually know what I'm talking about and I've been studying and researching. So that's by far the just recognizing that I'm super, super lazy. I have no discipline, like all the things that I'm just acting like it's going to get better. No, they're not going to get better. You got to be very proactive with these things.
But I think that's a natural thought process for us to have. You know what I mean? Because from the outside looking in, just me reading your bio, you're disciplined. You know what I mean? If it was just me, if I like I said before we started, I'm like, you're accomplishing a lot, man. You're doing a lot. But for you, that's your grind. That's like your hustle. So it's like to you, you're never going to think you're like, to the potential where you want to be because you're just in the grind of it. You know what I mean? That's what it is.
Also, though, like I said, so that's all in the past 5 years. At 30, I had to start over, like because of all the things that I was not being disciplined with. So the past 5 years, I've been extremely disciplined. I will say that, and that's the result of some of those things. Are a result of me making sure I'm meeting deadlines, making sure I'm doing things that I'm uncomfortable with doing. Public speaking, I was super scared of. So, being tapped in has really helped me to kind of build somewhat of a resume of how we can further the mission of the organization. But, before then, that's and though at any moment, like I was just talking to somebody because I was a security guard at 30, and that's when I was coming up with all this stuff, and I'm trying to figure this stuff out and all these other jobs. And I was sitting in the parking lot as an overnight security guard. I had all the same ideas I have right now.
Mhm.
And there's nothing keeping me away from going back to being a security guard except for my discipline. Like literally, like everything could just change because of
No,
one
and
bad choice.
yep, that's the truth. And it's, listening to you, it's crazy. It's like I'm kind of listening to myself a little bit because, like you said again, with the public speaking, I'm doing this, and people who probably I went to school with and everything, they probably said, I don't believe Ryan is doing it. I didn't, like in high school, I didn't say a word to nobody. I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? It was like,
Yeah.
it was, and I'm always, before these kind of, before interviews and stuff like that, I get nervous because it's the speaking and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
but it's what we want to do. So we
Yeah.
know we
Do it.
just kind of gotta walk through that. You know what I mean? Even now, the end of the month, I'm going down I got invited down to Virginia, and I was supposed to be speaking with some inmates.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's to me, it's like, it's a blessing, but it's like, it's something that I didn't know what I wanted to do when I started this. You know what I mean? It was just, I wanted to do it because I was interested in stuff like that. And I'm always interested in good stories and people's, just their hustle and just the good things that they're doing. And it's like, going down here, it's like, man, first of all, I'm coming out here just to talk. I'm not staying, so keep them doors unlocked.
What's the topic with them? Is it of your personal journey or a specific
Well,
topic?
it's I'm going down there. It's a guy. I'm speaking with one of the guys. He's doing 35 years, but he's now he's an advocate in the community. He does things out in the community. He sets up things out in the community. He's a positive influence down there, and it's talking about his story. And I also want to network too with other people down there. But it's something new. You know what I mean? I never thought I'd be traveling with this, but when you ask God for something and then you just put your head down, he's like, all right.
Yeah, he'll open up those doors.
Yeah.
Yep, he definitely will open up those doors.
So where can they reach you on social media?
Everything is at Minority Millennials. So that's MINORITY Millennials, MILLENNIALS. And my personal is real simple. It's at Dan Lloyd. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you for jumping on this podcast with me today, man. It's been a blessing, and I definitely want to continue to network with you, and I want to stay in touch with you.
I'd love to, man. I think I might have your email through Raven. If not, let's definitely connect. I'd love to hear how your journey down south and the conversations went.
Yeah. All right, man. I appreciate you again, man.
Likewise, blessings and everything.
Yeah, you too, baby.